Hello, everyone. Welcome to the National Bicycle Dealers Association Super Webinar Series. We are grateful to have you here with us today, and we are grateful to have Ascent 360 here to help us with this presentation. So I'm going to pass it over to Heather Knutson from Ascent 360 to introduce our presenters.
Good morning, and thank you, Rochelle. Thank you to the NBDA for including us in this webinar, and I'm Heather Knutson, Vice President of Marketing for Ascent 360. We're excited to welcome you to today's webinar, How to Keep Your Customers Riding and Buying as we return to the new normal. We've got a lot of great content to share today from our speaker lineup, and we know bike retailers are beyond busy, so let's dive right in. I'm pleased to introduce our thought leaders who will be joining us today and leading this session. We've got Scott Buelter, CEO and President for Ascent 360, and he's joined by Eric Lucan, CMO from leading bike retailer Mike's Bikes. Scott's going to kick us off here with the State of the Union and overview of essential steps you can take right away to segment, engage, and measure your audience. And Eric will be joining us to share some specific campaigns and what we call proven plays that Mike's Bikes is running and seeing success with. Your attendee lines are muted, and we'll be collecting questions in the chat pane on your behalf, which we'll ask at the end of today's session, time permitting. And Scott, with that, let's get started, jump right in, and the virtual podium is all yours.
All right, Heather, thanks so much. Look forward to the discussion today. Here's kind of a high-level agenda, right? We want to talk a little bit about, bike sales, bike accessories are in a bit of a boom, largely due to COVID. Get some sort of sense of what are the implications of that outdoor exercise boom, right? It's really beyond the bike industry. And then start thinking about, well, how do we think about consumer data, retail revenue, and how do we think about kind of keeping those consumers engaged and coming back and making your store, your retail store, kind of their headquarters for anything that has to do with bike. And part of that comes with what we know Eric and Mike's Bikes are doing. So Eric is a highly seasoned marketer that I think is doing some really kind of best-in-class strategies around engaging the consumer and building consumer relationships. And so Eric's here today to share some of that with us. So starting at a really high level, I asked Dirk Sorensen over at NPD to send us a little bit about how things have changed. And we see, I won't cover all of this, but we do see, e-bikes is 78% growth, 78% growth for transit fitness lifestyle bikes. Gravel bikes are up like crazy. It really doesn't seem like, road bikes are up in the same way that maybe we would have hoped they would start to come back. And I think that really has a lot to do with the way we think about COVID and the way that we know the type of consumer who's entering cycling. And here's a little bit more data from NPD, and that is, children's bikes are growing like crazy. Now, that's actually not within IBD necessarily. So, the outside of, the big box, if you will, grew 58%, which is kind of outpacing IBD. And then the lifestyle is growing really, really well within IBD. And so I think that's kind of a backdrop for what we want to talk about today. But first, let Eric, I'm sure everyone on the phone actually knows Mike's Bikes and knows them well, but let's let Eric kind of dig into a little bit about Mike's Bikes.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to NBDA for hosting this webinar and everybody for joining. Certainly, if you're joining live or watching this after the fact, it has been a wild ride for us in bike retail over the past couple months. I have to imagine if you're watching this webinar, you're probably also in the midst of putting in a PO to get bikes for the summer. At the same time, you're building a kid's bike, your phones are ringing off the hooks, and you probably have a line out the door, so thanks for taking the time to join. Just real quick, Mike's Bikes in a nutshell. We've been around since 1964. The first shop opened right here in Marin County, the birthplace of mountain biking. Company changed hands a couple times over the years. In the late 90s, Ken Martin, who's our current CEO and founder, acquired the company when it was just 2 bike shops. Between 2000 and 2012, really started to expand up to 12 locations across the greater Bay Area and Sacramento area. In 2006, we launched the Mike's Bikes Foundation, which is kind of a neat part of our company where we take donated used bikes at any one of our shops and send them to sister shops in Africa. Since the start of that program, we've helped ship 30,000 bikes to communities in need across Africa. Just one of the fun things we get to participate in. In 2015, we opened our 12th store, but probably also when we pivoted a little bit from expanding to more physical locations and really started to invest heavily in online and growing our online presence, mikesbikes.com, and all that comes with that. 2017, we did something that was unique, and we acquired a bike brand, Public Bikes, which was started here in San Francisco. Great brand, Dutch style, city bikes. They really captured the market pretty quickly with a ready-to-ride program where we can take these bikes and turn the handlebars, take the pedals off, and ship them 99% ready to ride. So now we have a bike brand under our umbrella. And then just earlier this year, right before COVID, we launched a mobile service with 4 vans, mobile tech departments that are covering our territory, and probably couldn't have happened at a more timely a point in time to serve the customers with the demand we're seeing right now. So that's just Mike's Bikes in a nutshell. A little bit about us. As I mentioned, we've got 12 stores, about 200 employees across all of our locations. And here are some of the strategic brands that we carry, primarily Specialized, Santa Cruz, Orbea, and a lot of other bike brands that we carry throughout our shops. So that's Mike's Bikes in a nutshell. I'm going to turn it back to Scott here.
Awesome. So what we're trying to dig into now, and we're going to look at some data and look at some of the best practices that Eric and his team have implemented. But it is like, as this cycling boom, will it extend as the rest of the economy opens, or will people shift back to all sorts of alternatives? And then, what's the best way to kind of keep that acquired customer base as the season progresses and into the year and next year? And I think the best place to start is with some data. This isn't Mike's Bikes data. This is kind of generalized data, but across all of our clients, we see the same thing. And that is that, 80% of revenue comes from about 20% of customers. So you see in this green pie chart, 82.49% of revenue is coming from only 20% of the customer base. And then another 10% is coming from the next slice. And so if you ask yourself, well, where should I focus? It's almost certainly on that 20% or the 40% of those individuals. Like, take great care of them and think about who they are and how you should treat them, because these guys really do pay the bills. And so what you see here is kind of a monetary score as part of RFM. And a 5 is a top spender, and you can see in this case a 5 is spending about a little over $2,000 as their kind of average spend, while the next bucket spends $250, right? So it's an average of about 5x, which again tells you that, like, your top customers are extremely valuable, and you want to think about who they are, the way they think about the world. Extending it a little bit, I'm adding in frequency and recency, right? And so you see this 555. That means someone spends a lot of money, they've purchased several times, and they have purchased recently. And you can see the ROI, and this is again real data from a real Ascent client. Not Mike's Bikes. I just didn't we didn't want to share specific Mike's Bikes data, so this is kind of obfuscated as to who it is. But you see a very clear trend line, and the older you get and the lower spending, you can see that the ROI actually becomes negative, and that means that you're actually spending more to keep these customers and bring them back than they drive in revenue, while the recent high spending ones are remarkably profitable. So before we start getting into best practices, just a little bit more. there's a couple other things to think about, and that is like, how do you keep a consumer? And these charts are a little bit hard to look at, but are really quite profound. And the first one suggests that new customers churn at a very high rate. And that is, if you've got a customer that comes into your store and buys something, 60% of them will not be back in the next 4 months. However, if they do come back, which is the second chart, if they come back for a second visit, 70% of them will come again within the next 4 months again, right? So if you can turn someone into a loyal customer, they will return and return repeatedly. And if not, right, if their experience is mediocre and they say, what the heck, I'm going to get my helmet at Target or whatever, then you're gonna lose them, and lose them somewhat quickly. And I think what we're suggesting is you want to act on these things.
Yeah, so with that, we really tried to put that into practice, because we know that if we can get the customer back in our shop, you know, our sales staff, our employees, you know, they are the best at doing what they do. And if we can just get the customer in the door and create that opportunity, then our employees, our managers can take it from there. To get that second visit, one of the things that we did is we put together a customer retention email campaign, where if a customer comes in, makes a purchase, or we capture their email and their transactional data, we know at a certain point they made a purchase. And if that customer does not come back into our shop within 3 months, then we send them an email at the 90-day mark. And it's a very kind of basic email. It's just saying, hey, we miss you. We want to give you a high five, roll in sometime, pedal in sometime soon. We made that email unique to each of our storefronts. So it's not a generic email, but you see 2 examples here. One is from our Palo Alto store and one is from our San Jose store. Customer gets this email, they see it, they recognize that storefront, that's where they went and made a purchase 90 days ago, and we just invite them back into the shop. This is an automated email, goes out every single day. It's sending out to the people that made a purchase 90 days ago and have not been back in our shop. And then if the customer still doesn't come back in, then at the 120-day mark, the offer gets a little more rich. So the first email was just a, hey, we'd like to see you. At the 120-day mark, this is kind of that 4-month lapse where there would be a drop off. We are now giving them an offer. We're saying, hey, take $10 off any $30 purchase. And we put a pretty strict redemption window on that, because we don't want them using this for the next 2 or 3 months, but it's 15 days to come in and to redeem that. And it's a rich offer, $10 off $30, but if it gets them back into the store that wouldn't have gotten them back in otherwise, it is well worth it. And we've seen some really positive results with this campaign. Some other customer retention that we do just to get customers back in the shop has to do around maintenance. Like many of you, you probably have some sort of maintenance package or plan that you sell. We have for $200, we have 5 years of unlimited comp tunes that we provide with any bike purchase. So we obviously, at the point of selling the bike, are trying to sell this maintenance plan. But as you know, not everybody buys the maintenance plan, no matter how good of a deal it is, no matter how well versed our salespeople are in trying to sell it, not everybody purchases it. So what we have is another series of emails that go out for any customer that bought a bike over a certain dollar amount, but did not buy the maintenance plan. Then they get this first email on the left, which just says, happy 45-day anniversary to you and your bike. And we invite the customer to come in for a complimentary check-over tune, which is something we offer on all of the bikes we sell for the first 90 days as the cables get stretched, and sometimes the bike just needs a little once-over. But one of the main reasons we do it is it gets customers back in the shop so that we could hopefully still sell them that maintenance plan. We continue to make our maintenance plan available up until 90 days after having purchased the bike. So we're really trying to, in this 90-day window, still sell that maintenance plan. So at 45 days, we try to get them back into the shop. We also have a link right there in the email where you can buy the maintenance plan through our website. If they don't respond or they don't come in, then at the 75-day mark, they get another email that's a little more aggressive, says, hey, you only have 15 days left to take advantage of this offer and to buy this maintenance plan. And that's kind of the last attempt to get them in the shop and to sell that plan. I would say in order to do this, it's important that you're capturing that transactional level data and that you could send emails based off of it. If you didn't, then you run the risk of maybe sending an email like this to somebody that bought a kid's bike, which just wouldn't be relevant. Nobody would buy a $200 maintenance plan on a kid's bike. Although actually, I think we've sold 1 or 2 of them. It's very, very rare. So we try to make this email very focused for individuals that bought a bike over a certain dollar amount where it would make sense to purchase a maintenance plan with it. In addition to that data that we're able to collect, we also do some social campaigns like you see over here on the right. Now that we've got our mobile service, we take that customer list from our database of anybody that bought a bike over a certain dollar amount and is within the geographic territory of our mobile bike service, and we serve up very specific ads. So rather than showing this ad to anybody in the Bay Area or anybody in the Bay Area that has a bike interest, we actually narrow it down to anybody in the Bay Area that bought a bike from us. So they're already familiar with the Mike's Bikes brand. It's a very relevant ad and performs very well.
So I think those are actually pretty fascinating examples, and they flow so well with the data, right? The things we know about the way consumers behave. It feels, Eric, like what you've done is act on that data and build your campaigns around that. And here I think is actually some more data that's kind of hard to read, and I get that. But what it's effectively saying is, if someone makes a purchase, when do they make a repeat purchase? And so how many days between the first purchase do they make a repeat purchase? And what we can see is that about 51% of repeat purchases happen within 60 days. And so as we dig into that data and we know what's happening under the covers, we can look and see what people are buying. And we do see that there's some decision where someone takes a bike home and then they realize that they don't have gloves. They've gone on one ride and they don't like their shorts, or their shorts don't fit anymore, or they their helmet isn't working, so they want a new one. And I think that what we try to think about is, well, how do you make sure that as they go home with that bike, they had a good experience, but 2, that when they're thinking about the next purchase, they're thinking about coming back to your store rather than just going to Target, or rather than just going to some other place that is on the way home from wherever they are. And so we know that you got to do that relatively quickly. And then the next thing is, when we actually look at the data, we do see things like accessories, but we also see additional bikes. And again, this isn't Mike's Bikes data. This is kind of generic to our customer base. And when we look at survey results about the purchase, they'll say, loved the first my first experience, and I bought my wife a bike, or something like that. So it's not just kind of a pure accessory sale either.
Yeah, so with that, we do a lot at the bike sale in store, and there's so many things we're trying to get the customer to also purchase, whether it's the maintenance plan, or whether they need a fit, or whether they need a helmet or pedals or shoes. But there's only so much you could squeeze into a sales transaction in the store. So after purchase, the customer gets home, maybe they've ridden their bike once or twice. We want them to get something in their inbox as well that reminds them of all of these things that we were sharing with them as they were buying the bike. So here's an example of some post-purchase emails that we send. They're pretty much the same email for all bike post-purchases. The subject line and the banner graphic changes a little bit if they bought a mountain bike or a road bike, as you can see by the images. But then in here, we're just telling them a little bit of the Mike's Bike story. We're promoting our maintenance package again, and we provide a bunch of different links to accessories that maybe they didn't think about, or maybe they almost pulled the trigger on, or accessories they realized they were going to need now that they have a new bike, whether it's a floor pump or a pair of shorts or helmet or accessories, lights. That's really the purpose of this post-purchase email, to get them back into the shop and also kind of get them thinking about what else they might need to complement their new bike. Oh. All right. And to kind of look at the whole picture of what we do to create this journey, is you can see a lot of the different touch points that a customer might experience. Now, this is unique to just a bike purchase, but we really have a series of emails that go out to them over a course of 2 years. So day one, they get that post-purchase email. At the 45-day mark and the 75-day mark, they get these maintenance offers. If they haven't been back into the store, then they're going to get the 90-day email and the 120-day coupon. And then a little later on in the life cycle of the bike and the customer, at the 18-month mark, we're sharing with them that, hey, we take trade-ins at our shop. Now, not many customers are probably thinking about trading in a bike at 18 months. We all have some of them that are, but we kind of just put it out there to say, hey, we do take trade-ins. And then at the 24-month mark, we're hitting them with that again. Showing all of this, I think, is a fundamental shift that we took in how we are communicating with customers. Because prior to this, our email strategy was very much a batch and blast. We would come up with a campaign, we would put all of our customers in it, we would hit send. It was very manual. We had to create all of that at once. We had to pull the list at once. We had to create the content. What this really shows, and what this changes, is these automated campaigns that automatically fire off of transactional data that you're collecting in the store. And it takes a little more time to set these up because there's logic behind them and there's creative behind them, and you have to make sure you get the rules right so the right person gets the right email. But since we've done this, it's pretty much a set it and forget it. You can go in and change the content here and there, but you've got all the rules set in place, and these emails are just firing out every single day on our behalf. We're communicating with our customers. So it's been a really, really good opportunity for us, and we've seen great results with it.
So I think you're right, Eric, around that shift that you guys made, but some of the rationale for it, I think is becoming more and more real. What we know for around, just call it retail generally, is that open rates and click rates on those batch and blast emails have just kept declining. And I think the averages are around something like 13–14% for an open rate, which is a little bit depressing, right? You've got a big list, and ultimately 13% of the people who get it look at it. But for those triggered emails, and I know we didn't put some of the stats in there, but those triggered emails are still around 40–60% open rate, and part of that is it's just very relevant to the person who's getting it, right? Someone just bought a bike, they're excited, they've just built a relationship with Mike's Bikes, and are now getting some emails from them that are about the bike that they just bought, and so those open rates are generally through the roof, and of course you don't have to do that much. So I think the big theme that we're trying to talk about today really fits into this, right? Acquisition versus retention. So retaining a customer, and this is a stat from the White House Office of Consumer Affairs, show that it costs about $1 to keep a client, and it costs about $6.50 to get a new client. And so getting new clients is actually very, very hard. Now, the great news is we know almost everybody in the industry is kind of awash with new customers. But the question starts being, well, that's great. That may last through the summer, but it may not last forever. So how do we think about retaining those customers? And that's a lot of what we've been talking about already today. And it's just like, the selling to a new prospect is very hard. Selling to an existing customer is much easier. And so when you think about that, maybe one of the most important things is to say, well, how do you acquire that data so that you can build and keep a relationship with them? So this is actual data from an actual bike store. It's about 3 years old, and as you can see by the data, I've obfuscated it, so these aren't really real names and addresses anymore. But the total spend is accurate, and this was actually a 1 month top 20 customers from a bike retailer, and the number one customer had actually spent $24,000. The number two, $22,000. So you can imagine that they probably bought 2 pretty nice bikes and some accessories, and on down the line. And what you can see from this is that bike retailer could really only talk with about half of the people, even if they wanted to, right? So number one buyer, we really have no idea who they even are. We couldn't send them a thank you note. You couldn't make a phone call and say, hey, I really appreciate your business. You couldn't send your mechanic over to give them a tune-up at their house if you wanted. And you might say that that's worth it at a purchase like $24,000, but even the lower value ones are just not there. And so one of the things we think is just the most fundamental is to get very good at acquiring data, right? We know that e-com vendors are collecting 100%. Amazon is collecting 100% of contact information. What we do hear from bike retailers as well as just retailers generally is that, hey, the folks on their floor don't really like collecting that data, or sometimes they don't necessarily think that it's appropriate. I think what I would believe is that certainly someone who spends $24,000 wants you to know who they are, and they want some record of the transaction that's more than the receipt that they have. And I think there's a lot of really good ways to go get that data, which I think Mike's Bikes does a great job of, and I'll let Eric kind of dig into that.
Yeah, and I would say we're always trying to do a better job at it. We haven't always done a great job at this, but we've definitely made it more of a focus moving forward, and it's really paid off. So how do you go about changing this within your shops? Because first and foremost, we're about selling bikes and getting people on bikes. And gosh, do we really want to take time out of that to ask a customer for their middle name and their email address and all this other data? It takes time, and I would encourage you to start small. We really tried to focus on the email address and kind of some of the different ways that we collect data at point of purchase, through our website, and through a test ride form. I'll kind of walk through each of these. But certainly at the point of purchase, it can be a little awkward asking for this information. So one of the ways that we've made it easier for our sales associates, one, we really need the customer's email address for warranty information and for recall information. And I know a lot of the bike manufacturers even require this with bike purchases. And for the customer, there's a real advantage in providing their email address, because we get these recall notices from time to time, and in some cases customers get brand new forks or other components for the bike. So to make that value proposition to the customer, say, well, if you provide us your email, then we could be in contact with you if we need to for free parts or accessories or repairs or safety, which is all very key. I don't know, based off of whatever point of sale system you're using, if you have the ability to email receipts. We do with our point of sale system. So asking for an email address is one way to avoid a paper receipt. Hey, can we just email you your receipt? A lot of customers are opting for that. They want that record in their email for a long time, so they can always go back and reference it if they have insurance claims from a bike crash, anything like that. Making it electronic is really key, so customers love that benefit. And then if you have a loyalty program, that's another advantage in collecting the email address, and a perk or a benefit you can offer your customer for giving you that information. We also try to gather information via our website. If you visit mikesbikes.com, you might see a couple pop-ups here and there where we're trying to collect the email address earlier on, maybe even before the customer makes a purchase on our site. We're using that to create prospect lists. So they came to our website, they haven't purchased yet, we want to communicate with them. Obviously, anybody that's purchasing online, if you have an e-commerce store, they're providing their email address. And then we also have a little sign up to our email list in the footer of our website. But as you've probably seen, very, very few individuals are scrolling to the bottom of your website and opting in that way these days. It needs to be a little more top of mind, front and center for them. And usually some sort of perk needs to be offered to get them to provide that information. Finally, we have a test ride form. This all used to be paper. If somebody wanted to come into our store, not a demo, this is just like a 10-minute test ride around the block, and we would have them fill out a paper form and sign a liability waiver. That data wasn't really getting entered anywhere. It was handwritten, so it was hard to decipher sometimes. We converted that to an electronic test ride form where the customer puts in the data. And that also is really key for clean data. As much as you can create a system where the customer is entering it and not dictating it to a sales associate who's then typing it in, it eliminates typos, it cleans up the data. You could even have some form field validation, like a drop down for state, or make sure your zip codes are 5 digits, make sure it's a valid email. You just get a little more clean data that way. And our goal really in our stores, and it's taken time to get here, is 100% email collection and customer data on every bike sold. We're certainly not asking a customer to give us their email if they're buying a goo or a water bottle, but if they're making a bike purchase, we have a compelling reason to collect this information. And with that, here's an example of the proactive email collection that we're doing on our website. So if somebody visits our website for the first time, they're probably getting presented this pop-up where we're saying, hey, free shipping and special offers if you give us your email address. And we're seeing a very significant growth in our list through this. By capturing the email ahead of time on the website, we then can communicate with that customer. We can also send them some abandoned cart emails based off of products they're viewing, and just start to engage with the customer that way.
Eric, how does the service department or bike maintenance play into data collection as well?
Great question. So when somebody's coming in to drop off their bike, we're typically asking for that same information, email address. We're actually asking for their mobile phone number as well. A lot of customers would prefer for us just to email them when their bike is ready, or text message them when their bike is ready, which is something new that we're doing. So we try to find opportunities like that where the customer wants to give us their information because it just makes their life easier and simpler, like getting an emailed receipt.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's important there as well. So that kind of leads into loyalty. And when we think about loyalty, we don't just think about, hey, you've got a loyalty card or something like that and earning points. It's more about, do they become an advocate of your brand? But before this webinar, I was looking at reviews on Mike's Bikes, inside of Yelp and on Google. And there's a really fanatical following, right? All these reviews that say, I love this place. I stopped by. I got, I had something wrong with my gears. They literally just fixed it right on the spot in 10 minutes and didn't charge me. I bought my wife her bike here as well, and she loves it now too. And so what we know is that loyal customers are worth kind of 10 times their first purchase, right? That's a lifetime spend. You might expect that an average lifetime of a consumer may be 5 or 6 years, and that may include a couple of bikes and a bunch of accessories. And so the average comes to about 10x, which is really critical in terms of just profitability. And so this is actually data again from that White House Office of Consumer Affairs. But the core idea is this: that if you keep someone happy and you don't spend a lot of money to get them back in, but they do come back in anyways and make some repeat purchases, like each of those, the marginal profit from each of those purchases is just higher and higher. So reducing customer churn, or if you'll take the opposite side and say keeping customers, can increase profits by 25 to 125%. So the math really comes down to when you look at a company that has low churn, they tend to be higher profitability than a company who has high churn and they don't have repeat customers, because they just have to spend a lot more money trying to get people back in and make additional sales.
Yeah, so with that, and going to one of the stats that Scott even provided earlier in the presentation, that 20% of customers are typically driving 80% of the revenue. The importance of having a loyalty program with some additional perks to really keep this this top 20% of your customer base incentivized. And there's ways to do loyalty programs that are not expensive, but are extremely compelling for customers. We do something that's for our loyalty program, it's kind of for the even the next tier, the higher spenders. And that same logic applies. If you would look at how much revenue comes from the top 5% of our customers, it's a very, very significant portion, and all the way up to the top 2% of our customers. So how do you keep that group engaged so that you're not losing them if they walk out the door and go to a competitor? That's a big hit, and a lot of times these most loyal customers are very influential within their local cycling community as well. So we try to keep them engaged by offering some exclusives. We have a Peloton Club loyalty program for customers that spend over a certain dollar amount, and if you're enrolled in that program, then you become eligible. Let's see, trying to advance the slide here. Oh, there we go. They become eligible for our Peloton Club newsletter, and we're offering them some kind of perks and exclusives that aren't necessarily costing us a lot of money, but we're leaning on our vendors and our suppliers to offer perks for these customers. So one would be a tour of the Specialized headquarters that we work with Specialized every year to arrange, and then we invite our top customers, and typically ones that have bought a Specialized bike, to come and get this tour. But then we also expand it a little bit, and we allow them to bring a friend, because oftentimes they're bringing a friend that's in the market for a bike. They get stoked out on it, and more times than not, they're coming in and they're buying a bike from us. We'll also partner with all of the local cause rides and charity rides in our local area, and say, hey, we've got this VIP list. These are our top customers. They're our top spenders. Can you give us 5 comped entries for this cause ride? And we will, if you give us these 5 comp entries, we will send it out to our list, and you'll get some great potential partners of your organization or your cause there. They might end up giving to the organization, joining the board. Who knows what they would end up doing? But these are the types of individuals that you want on your ride. It doesn't cost us anything, but now we're able to provide a great perk to our customers, as they can go do a free cause ride. And everybody loves free stuff, and it's amazing to me that even if somebody comes in and they're buying a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 bike, they still get stoked over a free $50 entry into a local cause ride. No matter what, people love the free stuff. So that's really what we're trying to do with the loyalty program, and yet another reason to ask for information and data so that we can sign them up.
Awesome. And if you think about what Eric's describing, right, it really is segmentation. And a lot of the examples that we've used so far are around segmentation based on behavior, right? They've made a purchase, so let's segment them into some transactional email, or segmentation based on spend and consider those people or invite them into the Peloton Club. But there are some really pretty simple ways to segment that are valuable as well. And the goal of segmenting is ultimately to send targeted messages that are relevant to the individual, right? So if you know someone has children, sending them an email about kids bikes will go over much better than if they don't have kids, or if they're like 19 or something like that. And then when they get it, they know this is totally irrelevant to me. And not only might they not spend time on that email, they might just kind of opt out, right? Like, I don't know why I'm getting these emails. So there are some really simple ideas, right? And just think about someone's age and their gender. That's pretty easy data to access, and you can target messages based on that.
Yeah, so one example for us for right message to the right person is our kids trade-in program. One of the things that we noticed going back several years is coming into a place like Mike's Bikes, an IBD, to buy a kid's bike. Certainly there's a premium with buying a kid's bike from an IBD. And we really wanted to try to shift kind of consumer behavior about the importance of buying a kid's bike from an IBD as opposed to your big box store. We've probably all seen, the horror stories of people coming in with a bike they bought from, some nameless big box store, and the fork is backwards and the parts are loose and plastic parts are half broken, and it's just not a good experience. But it's a less expensive bike, and people figure, hey, it's a kid's bike. What's the difference between this bike and that bike? So in order to compete there, we created a trade-in program for kids' bikes, knowing that the bikes that we sell are more expensive. We said, well, if you buy a kid's bike from us, we will allow you to trade that bike back in to us, and we will give you half of the money back towards the next size up. Because the other thing we were finding is, even if people were buying a kid's bike from us, a lot of times they were skipping sizes. So they would go straight from a 12-inch to a 20-inch because, do I really want to buy a 16-inch in between if they're only going to have it for a year or two? So creating this trade-in program has really helped with that price sensitivity around kids' bikes, and getting people to buy it from 12 months or a 12-inch to a 16 to a 20, 24, and then onto an adult bike. So what we do, if somebody buys a kid's bike from us, they've got 2 years to trade it in. So at the 12-month, 18-month, and 22-month mark, we are sending them emails reminding them, hey, now's the time to come on in, trade in your bike. You've got X number of months left. The 22-month one, which you see on the right, is sort of the last one. So you only have 60 days left to take advantage of this. And these are very, very relevant. In fact, we get a lot of customers that write back to us and say, thank you so much for sending me. I would have forgotten where I was on this trade-in cycle or missed the opportunity. But once again, it's right message to the right person, high engagement, high open rate. We do some of the same on social, because on social media and Facebook, you can target these segments. So you can specifically target on Facebook parents of toddlers, parents of elementary age children, and that's a perfect audience to focus on for kids' bikes, especially during the holidays. You can also do some lookalike audiences. So we would take everybody that's bought a kid's bike from us, and we upload that data into Facebook. Anybody can do this. Upload the information in there, and you create a lookalike audience, which will identify other parents of kids that same age, and you can promote ads to them as well. Here's an example of one that we do, promoting our trade-in program and our kids' bike selection.
Awesome. That's really, really cool stuff. One thought around all this kind of consumer engagement is it's a journey. It starts out where you say, I want to just do one or two simple things, and then you can get more and more advanced over time. And you at some point you can think about things like personas, right? Where you've got enthusiasts, and everyone knows who those enthusiasts may be, who are in there, and they're looking up towards the athletes, right? The halo riders. But they really think differently than event riders or adventure-seeking retirees. And these are just made-up personas. Actually, what were used by another client. But the core idea is that as you can do the simplest segmentation, and that can become more and more complicated, and you can say, hey, we know something about these people, right? This is their household income, and this is their purchase frequency, and all those sorts of things. And so it's on some level, the sky's the limit, and you can kind of take this ultimately where you want to. And I guess in summary, I think what hopefully we've talked about today is that as you're gaining all these new customers this summer and spring, that think about some ways to kind of keep them engaged, keep them excited, and help them kind of continue on in their journey, but through your store. Off to you, Heather.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Eric. We have a couple minutes for questions. We do have a few questions that came in, so if it's cool with you guys, I'm going to ask those now. And I wanted to let you both know that all of your attendees have stayed on for the entire duration of this program, so I think they're interested. And I'm going to let you guys both catch your breath while I ask one quick poll question here. So take a sip of water. I'm going to launch this. It'll take just 30 seconds. And if everybody participating today can answer this question, if you're interested in a complimentary data-driven communication strategy and marketing automation assessment, let us know. We're absolutely here to help you, and you can say you're too busy. We'll contact you later. We know that bike retailers are busy, or if it's not the right time, we respect that as well. But we are offering that, and please take just a moment to complete your answers now. We'll leave this on for just 10 more seconds. Great, thank you. All right, Eric and Scott, a couple of questions here that came in from the audience. I'll pose this to both of you. We can't imagine taking on new business and we're out of inventory. How or why should we be taking on more marketing when customers are the last thing we need more of right now?
Well, I'll answer, and then Scott chime in. You don't necessarily have to take on more marketing now. I think if there's anything that I would encourage you to be doing would be to collect the data. Even if you don't have a system in place now in order to do these types of emails and automation or anything like that, at the very least, collect the data, because this is a boom we're seeing right now with customers. And we all know it's not going to last forever. There is going to be a time when it is going to be good to communicate to that group. So I hear you loud and clear. It's what we're experiencing, the amount of phone calls and demands and trying to track down inventory and keep up with tech and find employees to hire. And it just is not letting down at all. So you probably can't think about, gosh, I need to email this person that came in yesterday, but you at least want to get their information, because we know it is going to slow down. And when it slows down, that's going to be the perfect time to do something with all the data you've been collecting during this season. So it's start small, but get that information, because you will be glad you have it later on.
Terrific. Scott, I'm guessing you may want to answer this one. How can a smaller business get started with this approach? We only have one marketing person and she's already so busy.
Yeah, so I think I think there's a couple questions there, and I'll even kind of ask Eric his journey in this. But what I'd say is that it is a journey, and you really don't ever want to try to boil the ocean when it comes to any of these ideas. So if I were to think about the journey, I would say, well, let's start with something very simple, like 2 post-purchase emails. And if you can say, like, well, I'll get those 2 done, then what you've actually done is taken a load off of your marketing person, because now you've actually got automated communications that are not only engaging the customer, they're like helping them remember like the name of the store, right? You might imagine that a consumer comes in, their tire's flat, they get a couple tubes from you, they walk out, let's say you get their email, they might not even remember what store they were in or the name of it, right? All that stuff is possible. And I think you just start very simple and say, hey, this is a 3-year journey or a 5-year journey to get to the level of sophistication that Mike Spikes is at. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that journey, Eric. And I know this isn't, Mike's isn't even your first rodeo, right? You've been at this for a while. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, well, first off, here we don't have a huge marketing team. I mean, you've got myself and a graphic designer that's kind of responsible for a lot of the email campaigns that we do. Moving more to automation, it does. I'll be honest, it takes more time to get it set up, and there is an investment in it to build this out. But once you do, then it really is a set it and forget it type of approach. And you don't want to entirely forget it because you want to modify that content a little bit. But to just know that every single day when I come into work, there's already 100 or 150 emails that are in the queue and are going out automatically, and I don't have to do anything about it. It has definitely paid for itself and was well worth that time to get it set up. And I think Scott was right. You start small. It's taken us a couple of years to really build out these campaigns. We didn't go from 0 to all of these built out campaigns, all fully automated and firing. There's always little improvements we're making along the way. We're finding that, oh, this automated email went to this customer and this customer actually didn't buy a bike, they bought something else. Why did they get the email? And you have to troubleshoot it and figure that stuff out. So it's not it's a constant process, and we're always making little tweaks to it. But we started small as well. When I started here, we didn't have any automated emails. We had pretty much just the batch and blast approach, and slowly over time have migrated to this.
Great. We've got time for 2 more questions. This came in from Fred from our audience today. With a 14% open rate on promotional emails, have you considered direct mail as well?
Yeah, so we do some direct mail. It's typically around when we do some sales. But one of the advantages of having clean data is that you can do direct mail, and that you're not wasting money and postage and printing to send to addresses that are no longer good anymore. We are, as we are a customer of Ascent, and their system does run it through change of address registries, so that when we do pull our list and do direct mail, we know that it's going to real life, to those customers that are there at that location. We don't do a lot of direct mail, but we do have some success with it when we do. And we typically try to put some sort of offer on the direct mail, like a scannable coupon, even if it's just a $5 off, so that we can measure how many people are coming in and actually redeeming those that direct mail offer.
I would jump in and also say that one thing to consider with direct mail is it's remarkably high ROI if you target correctly, right? And you think back to when we talked about recency, frequency, monetary, right? If you're talking to recent high value customers that you can also see have not opened your email, right? Why they it goes to their junk, or they clicked some button that pushes it into a folder that they forgot about, and they don't even see it anymore. If you target those folks with direct mail, it's going to be very, very high ROI, and you're going to be really happy you did it. If you do kind of a bigger spray with direct mail, we've never seen those work. They're not as productive. So you can almost predict who would be a good customer of direct mail.
And I'll just add one other thing that we do with that data, because we're able to find out who doesn't open our emails. We can also take those names and just with a couple of clicks send it over to Facebook and Instagram and market to those individuals. So it's very targeted. These people aren't getting our emails. Maybe we don't want to spend the money on direct mail, but with a couple $100 spend on Facebook, we can get our message in front of those customers and measure clicks and engagement that way as well.
Final question here. I can appreciate this as a marketer myself. Scott, I'll let you answer this one. Does Ascent 360 provide resources and support for email creative?
Yeah, we actually do. I think that on some level, emails become easier and easier to make good-looking emails. At the same time, it's still like not it's not friendly to someone who doesn't have those skills. So we actually do have folks on staff that will take care of creative and get people templates and those sorts of things. So that it is not the headache that it used to be.
I would agree with that, and want to wrap up right on time. So before we pass it back to Rochelle, I want to thank you both for presenting today, offering your thought leadership. And if Ascent 360 can help your organization with data-driven marketing automation, our team is here. We're on standby and ready to offer our time and a complimentary consult. We're committed to helping small to medium-sized direct-to-consumer businesses, including bike retailers, and we'd love to help you know when and how to speak to your high-value customers and capture today's new customer as well. If you have a suggestion for a future webinar, I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out. Heather Sharp-Knudsen on LinkedIn. And with that, thank you for your time, and I'm going to pass it back to you, Rochelle. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We appreciate that as well.
Thank you, and thank everyone who joined us today. If you are not a member of the NBDA, we would love if you would consider it. Go to nbda.com to see all of our benefits and our membership pricing. We would love to have you as part of our association and part of our family of bike dealers here. So thank you again, everyone, and we will close out for the day.
Awesome. Thank you as well. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Rochelle. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, everybody.
Good day. Thank you.
Bye now.